Yes, good evening, ladies and gents, boys and girls. Welcome along to the live stream of the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. Let's get this show on the road.
Hey, we're rolling. We got all game long. Stay tuned, man. We got something special for y'all today.
You're listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast.
To the 10, right to the 5, scooting in for the score. Touchdown.
Yeah!
Evening, fellas. Looking very festive at the bottom of the screen this evening, it's got to be said. But let's start with the man in the top left of your screens, Mr. Timothy Lambert-Monk. How are you this evening, buddy?
I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling angry and I'm feeling argumentative. So let's get on with it.
Ooh, that's a way to start the podcast, isn't it? Jesus. Talk about breaking us in gently there, mate. Yeah. The group chat got a little bit feisty last night, ladies and gents, so that could carry over into this evening, but bringing plenty of festive cheer at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to get my sunglasses now with that thing flashing around his neck. Welcome him in, Kieran. How are you, buddy?
No Patriots game this weekend, so I'm in a particularly festive mood.
We'll gloss over the fact they played Thursday then, mate. We'll forget that ever happened, mate. We'll forget it ever happened. But a man with a big smile on his face, how his old team got a big win yesterday and his new team are about to get a whooping tonight, but we'll get on to all that later.
Oh, let's talk about that in a bit. I'm looking forward.
We'll talk about it in a bit. Evening, Lawrence. How are you, buddy?
Fantastic. Just as a little aside, love to do my little asides. On a non-NFL front, just to say I watched the Jackie Robinson film 42 on Netflix today whilst I was attempting to work at the same time. And it's a really, really good watch. So if you get an opportunity to see that, really recommend it. It's kind of keeping it in the American sports arena, but it's got Harrison Ford in it, which will kind of shock you. And no, he doesn't play Jackie Robinson, just in case you were wondering. But yeah, good fun watch.
Well, I've got a couple of hours to kill after this, mate, before the big kickoff, so that might be my new viewing experience. But let's get into the weekend's action, boys. We will talk Monday night a little bit later on, as it's obviously a big match coming up, but plenty of big ones over the course of the weekend, none more so than Sunday night football. We sat here a week ago, fellas, talking about an undefeated team. Two of us on this podcast said that they were pretty fraudulent and were going to get beaten by Washington. I don't think many people believed us, Kieran, but me and you were right, my friend. And here we are 1 week later, 2 defeats later. The Bills take down the Steelers. Talk us through it, buddy.
It was incredible to watch because I am the biggest Josh Allen fan in the world, and coming from somebody who is a Patriots supporter, it's probably a bit, worrisome for me to admit that I like a divisional rival's quarterback better than I like Cam Newton right now. But, I knew this was going to happen going in. We called it last week against Washington. I'm not believing this guff that Steelers fans are putting out there. We played 3 games in 12 days. No, you're supposed to be undefeated for a reason, but everyone knew it was fraudulent. Anyone who watches football knew that this was not a good team, and they need to do less TikTok dances and more training, because what a terrible performance they had this week. I will start with the Bills, though, because Josh Allen once again looked impressive. 238 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have an unfortunate pick that I don't really think was his fault. That was just a circumstance of Dawson Knox there. But Stephon Diggs as well looked great. Another 100-plus yard game. This team is, this team is amazing. I've been saying it all season, and the 2 teams I talked about most this preseason was actually the Bills and Miami, and a Patriots fan saying that, so it has a bit more weight to it when I'm giving these teams props. But Bills went out, looked fantastic. This defense is absolutely suffocating with guys like Jordan Poyer, Matt Milano, Trey White as well, who I think is, if he hadn't had the amount of time off he had due to injury, I think we could have been potentially looking at Defensive Player of the Year, because he is a massive difference maker. But, I have loved everything I've seen from the Bills, and I think their record is slightly unfair to them because, they have dropped 3 games that they could have probably stayed in and won. But, yeah, the Steelers have just looked terrible. And I think we always talk about how confidence affects a player, and you maybe wouldn't think it would affect a guy like Big Ben Roethlisberger, who's been in the league so long. But I think the loss to Washington there really did rattle their confidence and maybe hurt them a little bit. And Juju Smith-Schuster is telling everyone he's a number one receiver and he's doing the renegade or whatever crap dances he's got off that children's app next. And dude takes him 55 yards on 6 receptions. I mean, that is not wide receiver one numbers. And the defense of the Steelers is actually really good. I know that's what's been carrying through them a lot of games. You know me, I love Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think that guy is an all-pro. He is a very talented guy, but they're not putting it together. Their running game as well. They went for, under 50 yards again on something like 15 attempts. This team cannot run the ball. And if you look, that Lawrence will tell you best. He's seen maybe not as far back as Terry Bradshaw, but he knows this Steelers
thanks
team.
for that.
The Steelers team has always been built on a strong running game, and that's really helped augment the passing attack. And they just don't have it this year. And they should have paid Le'Veon Bell that bag because they might be in a bit of a better position now. But yeah, terrible performance from the Steelers. I honestly think they're going to have trouble against the Burrowless Bengals next week. I still think they'll win, but it will still be a tough game for them. Somehow they'll make a meal out of it. But yeah, this Steelers team has been entirely muted. Ben had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 187 yards, and he dropped back 37 times, and he was just getting absolutely smothered by that defense coming at him. And yeah, it's just, we talked about this weekend. It's been a bad weekend for kickers. I think a bunch of extra points were missed, but it's been a tough weekend for the Steelers, and I am absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you didn't seem too disappointed with it being such a bad week. And Tim, just throw a question to you, mate. You asked me the question, I think it was last week. You said if the Browns made the playoffs, who did I want to see them face? Are the Pittsburgh Steelers now actually the team that everybody in the playoffs will want to face, in your opinion?
Likely, yes. The only one thing I would say is that the Steelers still have 3 or 4 weeks to kind of try and sort a few things out and tweak a few things before they do. Obviously, they clinched a playoff berth yesterday as well, so it's not as if they're in trouble of not even making the playoffs. So they, even if here they lose out, or they don't, somehow the Cleveland Browns win the division. They've still got a couple of weeks to tweak and fine tune, but yeah, the lack of running game, which Kieran said would concern me. But yeah, I mean, certainly this time a couple of weeks ago, certainly from their minds and the viewpoints of opposing teams in the AFC, their stance on the Pittsburgh Steelers has probably changed over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Lawrence, I mean, the downturn in form can probably be sort of all traced back to Bud Dupree leaving the field and obviously not returning with a torn ACL. That defense that was so dominant in the first few weeks, it's amazing how much of an impact just losing one guy in particular. I know they've had some other injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but Bud Dupree alongside TJ Watt, that sort of double attack, if you like, losing that, it seems to have sort of blunted that pass rush, and all of a sudden now teams don't appear to be so scared as they possibly would have been a month ago.
Yeah, Kieran, I just wanted to know if you know Deontay Johnson's favourite American chocolate bar.
Oh God, what is it?
It's obvious.
Something to do with drops, I know that much.
It's a Butterfinger.
There you go.
Bravo.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the Bud Dupree thing was the kind of evil icing on the cake in terms of that shift away from the Steelers kind of being kind of this intimidating unit. I think when they lost Devin Bush, that to me was actually a bigger loss. And not a lot of people might know lots about Devin Bush, but second-year inside linebacker, he is an absolute monster. He's an absolute tackling machine. And they haven't managed to replace him. And then Robert Spillane gets injured as well, who was Devin Bush's replacement. And you're starting to kind of go deep into the depth chart. You're kind of bringing up people that you weren't expecting to do any more than play some special teams kickoff coverage. And suddenly they're kind of in the starting lineup. And that's when it starts getting scary. And then as we've covered, that running game, I mean, what was James Conner's stat line? Not worth turning up for, really. Just shocking. And this the Steelers, you think of the Steelers as this kind of, lunch pail type team. You think of Jerome Bettis. You remember kind of the good old days of that kind of power run, Merrill Hodge, real kind of gutsy, kind of up the middle, 4-yard grinding kind of thing. And it's just completely gone away. And that ridiculous game plan of, getting Big Ben to throw 50 passes a game, you're not going to win anything with that. It's just not going to happen. You have to keep possession of the ball. And honestly, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm keeping Deontay Johnson off the field, because James Washington, who is the 4th string receiver, he's probably the best receiver they got at the moment, and he's the 4th string. Chase Claypool has disappeared out of sight in the last 4 to 5 weeks after that insane 4-touchdown performance. He has not done anything special for quite a while now, and you still look at him, he's still like a monster of a human being, but he hasn't done anything. And that the confidence of that receiving unit is pretty much at ground zero at the moment.
Yeah, plenty of issues for the Steelers. My heart bleeds. Don't cock it up tonight, Cleveland. Week 17, Pittsburgh, Cleveland for the division. Oh, the stuff dreams are made of. But let's get to the team that are now the new number 1 seed in the AFC, involved in a bit of a ding-dong battle, it's got to be said yesterday. The Chiefs making a comeback and then ultimately holding off a spirited performance from the Miami Dolphins. Tim, started off badly. I'm sure you're going to mention the longest sack in history, which was really sort of summed up the first quarter of play from the Chiefs. But they got their act together. But like I say, ultimately ended up hanging on in the end, didn't they?
Yeah, just a word on that 30-yard that 30-yard sack. It reminded me of an international series game between the Chargers and the Saints, where I think Drew Brees just ran backwards and just threw it through the end zone. It kind of reminded me of that. I did wonder at one point whether he was just going to say, "Do you know what? Sod it. I'm just going to throw it through the end zone and we'll start again." Tony Romo made the comment in commentary that he thought that the Chiefs were a bit more complete team this year. And I found that a bit surprising personally. I went through and looked at some stats and compared their team to last year. They seem to be all kind of in the same positions in terms of ranking in certain metrics like points for, yardage, and all the rest of it. So whether or not he's maybe hinting at the fact that now that they've won the Super Bowl, there's no longer that you've not won one yet, and maybe they're more complete because they've been there and done that, possibly. But in terms of the way they performed, in terms of how they win games and how they played, I don't really see there's too much difference between this team and the one from last year. Maybe you could argue the running game a little bit with Damian Williams, but it's still the same dominant Kansas City Chiefs offense. I mean, yes, they sputtered early on, and Miami went to a 10-0 lead. And the thing I will say about Miami is they went missing for 2 quarters. And if you take 3 interceptions away from Patrick Mahomes and only get 10 points, I'm sorry, but you're not going to win the game. So hopefully, from Tua's point of view and Flores' point of view, I think that they probably would have learned a lot from that game. So you can't have 3 takeaways in the game and only have 10 points to show for it. And it's similar to last season. The Chiefs just score when they want, and just once they click that button and let the machine go, they had another 3 touchdowns within 3 or 4 minutes of actual game clock time, either side of the half. So unfortunately, it's going to be very hard to beat a Kansas City team. On the defensive side of things, again, similar output in terms of Kansas City. They're able to, whether or not it was partly Miami not quite knowing what they were doing, being 10-0 up and kind of turtlenecking a little bit. I'm not too sure, but if things keep going in the way they are, the Kansas City Chiefs, anything stopping them from a number 1 seed is their trip to the Saints next week. But yeah, for Miami, I think there's still a lot of positives to take from this game. It was good to see that Tua didn't turtleneck up and go into his shell and kind of crumble when the Kansas City Chiefs just poured it on. It was good to see a fight back. It was good to see that he utilizes a lot of players that aren't necessarily starters. You had Gesicki, obviously a nice couple of catches as well. Obviously Preston Williams is down. Myles Gaskin was out for this one as well. And you look at who they trotted out at wide receiver and running back. I mean, you'll be forgiven for not knowing who was there. I mean, they're looking good. They should be. They're more than equipped to be a decent wild card team and give anyone a good go for their money. They've got a tricky set of games to finish off this season. They go to Vegas and Buffalo, their last 2 games. I haven't got written down who they've got next week. I can't see in my notes. But they've got Patriots, home to the Patriots next week, which they usually win anyway. So they should take care of business there. Maybe Kieran may be looking forward to that podcast next week. But I think Brian Flores and the GM's name escapes me. But I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But I think they're still well ahead of schedule. Obviously, it seems a long time ago now since we were arguing about whether or not it's the right time to bring him in. I think he's acclimatizing well. Like I say, he's got the grit between his teeth to bring his team back from a deficit against the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions. And then just before I sign off, I just want a quick shout out to Travis Kelce, who just keeps on getting it done at the age of 31. I know it's tight end, so you get a bit more of a shelf life, but he's 4th in receiving yards last year in total. Currently leads the league. He leads the league in receiving yards. So kudos to you, Mr. Travis Kelce.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's certainly a class above at that position, isn't he? Obviously, George Kittle in that conversation, but obviously struggled with injuries throughout the course of this year. The thing that I find when I'm watching the Chiefs, because I watched quite a lot of that game yesterday, with obviously no Browns game for me to watch, and I don't know how you feel watching them, Lawrence, but even at 10-0 down, I didn't for 1 second think the Chiefs are going to lose this game.
No, it's kind of when I drew the game in the predictions on the website, and I managed to get it spot on. I said 33-23, so I wasn't too far off in terms of the scoring. It was just one of those ones where they've just got a tap, haven't they? The Chiefs, and as long as they realise actually how to turn on the tap, then I don't think there's anybody that can turn it off. Even Mecole Hardman, who'd been kind of very, very quiet. I don't quite know why they haven't been bringing Mecole Hardman into the offense at all, but maybe they don't even need him. But that was a gorgeous punt return, and it's just kind of you get killed everywhere offensively, and then the special teams unit comes along and gets a touchdown just to rub it in. Yeah, it's very, very, very hard to stop them. And even kind of savvy veteran Sammy Watkins, just a little bit of love for him. He comes up with those clutch catches. He's not a 150-yard a game 3 touchdown monster, but he's coming up with those little clutch catches. So they're just blessed everywhere offensively, and the offensive line's doing an amazing job. So yeah, I don't know how you stop them. And I think the only way you can do that is by having a monster running game. So I know we're coming on to talk about the Colts in a bit. So that could be very interesting.
Yeah, and just very quickly, final word to Kieran just on the Chiefs. I mean, the Tony Romo comment, Tim, I heard it in commentary yesterday as well, and I thought similar to you that, this seemed like a very comparable team to where they were 12 months ago. I think everybody just has this assumption that because they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire and they've obviously now got Le'Veon Bell, that the running game's had a big uptick. If there is any weakness with the Chiefs, I feel more confident in them converting 3rd and 15 than I do in them converting 3rd and 1. What should there be any concerns, Kieran, in terms of Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Once we get to January, there's potentially weather to deal with. You're going to have tougher defenses to play. That would be the only concern for me at the moment if I was the Chiefs. Yes, they've obviously got Mahomes and all those weapons on the outside, but if they need to rely on the ground game, for me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire flashed in his debut, has shown very brief glimpses in other games, but he hasn't really set the world alight like a lot of people thought he was going to, has he?
I don't really think they're using him like he should be used. Obviously, I saw him play a bunch at LSU, and it was he needs to sort of be used on gap runs only, because he's got those really explosive hips and that real low center of gravity, and he can hit gaps perfectly. And I mentioned a ton before this season, and I said he's not a downhill runner. He's a guy who's going to get you 5-6 yards. He's going to not necessarily break tackles, but he'll drag someone with him for a couple extra yards. And I mean, they added Lev Bell, but that from Le'Veon Bell there, it kind of seems like a ring chaser situation from there. He's sort of playing up to what's his face from Golden State Warriors. He was he just sort of The run game, I don't know why they can't get going. And I know they're obviously missing a key piece in their offensive line with Lawrence Duvernay-Tardif, MD. I'll give him his doctorate there because the NFL won't let him have it on his jersey. But yeah, I just don't think they're really using him correctly because we saw at LSU he can be a threat in the passing game, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the best on a 5 or 6 yard little run hitting a gap then because his lateral speed is way better than his downhill speed. It's just I don't think they're using him right, and that's actually I think that's the biggest problem with their run game. But I think Tim actually did want to make a point about that.
Yeah, I think what says it all is the fact that you look. There was a crucial 4th down. I think it was towards when they were sorting the game away. They went, rather than running the ball, they went to Tyreek Hill on a slant out route, and they did a bit of whatever. I think that says all you need to know about the run game for Kansas City.
Yeah, maybe they can get LeGarrette Blount out of retirement. That's what they need, just a bruiser to just take it 2 yards on 3rd and 1 and then sub him back off again. But Lawrence, you teed yourself up beautifully because the next game we're going to talk about is the Colts. That's a team that can certainly run the football. They ran it all over the Raiders yesterday, in particular Jonathan Taylor. I'm sure you're going to get to him. It was obviously probably the biggest matchup in terms of both teams from a playoff perspective in the AFC yesterday. I know Tony's watching. God bless you, Tony. Join us every week, and he's commenting along, big Raiders fan. But I hate to ask, is it time to stick a fork in those Raiders, mate? And obviously, are the Colts for real?
Yeah, I mean, we were saying a couple of weeks ago, weren't we, that this will be a game that will absolutely separate the men from the boys, and that is absolutely what the Colts ended up doing to the Raiders. I think they've actually separated them from a playoff berth. Aside from that one loss, that one beat down against the Titans, the Colts have now won 4 out of their last 5. They started the season 5-3, and now they're kind of 9-4 and kind of doing a respectable job. And what have they got left? They've got the dead Texans, the dead Jaguars, and a nosediving Steelers team in the last 3 weeks. So they've got a really legitimate shot at 12-4. Yes, the Steelers, they're going to give them a game, but they've got they have a real possibility of finishing up 12-4, which is a really, really good record, and probably the best record Philip Rivers has had for quite a few seasons. And the team that the Colts beat, the Raiders, they've allowed 150 points. Exactly 150 points in their last 4 games, losing 3 and requiring a miracle, as it was a couple of weeks ago, more commonly known as a zero blitz, to overcome a winningless Jets team. So that's how bad it's been for the Raiders, and therefore it was absolutely no shock whatsoever that the Raiders sacked their defensive coordinator on Sunday night. Paul Guenther is now collecting his P45, and as we kind of near to that coaching carousel, we're going to see what happens there. This is I read a stat about Guenther. He managed to have, between 2018 and 2020, he managed to coach 5 games for the Raiders where they had 0 sacks and 0 turnovers, which is just that's stealing money from your employer, if you ask me. So he's been replaced by Rob Marinelli for the rest of the season, and I think the wheels of fortune, that those roulette wheels, as we would be using, are coming right off the Raiders playoff bus. But somehow they're clinging on to a winning record after 13 weeks, 7-6. As you say, they allowed 212 yards rushing to the Colts, and that was almost expected when you kind of looked how porous that Raiders defense has been this season. But the fact that they didn't lay a single finger, I lie. They managed one quarterback hit in the entire game, against a quarterback who's probably got the same ability as Jabba the Hutt after an all-night tequila session in a Tatooine strip joint. But that was their absolute downfall. Rivers was given time to find his targets, found T.Y. Hilton for 2 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton is absolutely en fuego at the moment. That's three weeks in a row he's been scoring touchdowns, and he's He's looking like his old self. What was a bit shocking was the fact that the Raiders managed to keep this game actually competitive going into the fourth quarter. They were only down by 7 going into the fourth quarter. And in fact, they had an early lead. They managed to get 14-10 up after going 10-0 down. So they were keeping it competitive for 3 quarters, but it was an absolutely forced dawn. Colts looked in control really throughout the game, and Jonathan Taylor's second touchdown with under 10 minutes left was the dagger. And then a Kari Willis 50-yard interception pick 6 was like twisting the dagger around the rib cage of the Raiders. And that was kind of all she wrote, really. The Colts knew they had to keep Darren Waller, who's one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends, out of the end zone to win. They managed to do that. Nelson Aguilar did have a mildly good game, 100 yards. Aguilar's actually 4th in the NFL in yards per catch, and it was his 7th touchdown of the season. So he's quietly doing stuff. So if you're doing DraftKings, he's a nice cheap pickup. I just haven't got the confidence to play him, but he did well on Sunday, and he's just 1 touchdown off of his 8 touchdown record that he had as an Eagles player in 2017. The remainder of the Raiders' schedule is not actually the worst out there. They've got home games against 2 rookie quarterbacks. They've got the Chargers and the Dolphins, and then they got a trip to Denver to finish the year. So they could win 2 out of 3 and put them at 9-7, but I think 9-7 is not enough to get in the playoffs in the AFC. If they lose to Miami in Week 16, it is kind of completely all over. So they're hanging on by a thread at the moment. And what it does do, Sean, is it makes that Ravens-Browns game tonight even juicier. There's lots of investment, not just Ravens and Browns fans in that game. Lots and lots of investment. And Browns win keeps Vegas alive barely, whereas a Ravens win will make that wild card race almost impossible for them to get into. And we just got to give one shout out to Colts defensive back Kenny Moore for his absolutely spectacular end zone one-hand interception, his kind of Beckham-esque job of doing it. And again, right in front of Darren Waller. And it was in quite a crucial situation in the game. It was 14-17. If Derek Carr would have hit Darren Waller, it would have been 21-17. The Raiders would have been coasting, and who's to say they wouldn't have put 40 points up? I mean, this is a team that put 40 points up against the Kansas City Chiefs, so they've got potential to put a lot of points up. But that interception was a real game changer, and so I think Kenny Moore, play of the day.
Yeah, it was certainly the catch of the weekend, wasn't it? And Tim, we've joked plenty on here about Philip Rivers, and we all had a good chuckle at that play a few weeks ago when he was straddled on his backside. The one thing that has been noticeable, there it is, Kieran, absolutely. The thing that has been noticeable for me, and it's certainly not every play by any stretch of the imagination, but the Colts have had so many different players actually take a snap from under centre, whether it's actually putting a running back there, bringing Jacoby Brissett in. And, all of a sudden, the defensive side of the ball is thinking, well, hang on, who've actually got a mark here? Who am I covering? Who's going to run the ball? And Jacoby's obviously got the threat of passing it also. It's all of a sudden giving them an extra dimension in the playbook, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think you have to give a bit of kudos to Frank Reich. I think it's obviously clear. Obviously, there's troubles in Philadelphia, but it's clear to see that Frank Reich is given a decent. He's going to be a decent head coach in the future years to come. He's deserved his shot, and he's getting creative. He's confident. Obviously he's got the weapons. He's got the players around him to be able to operate his offense. And the players are executing it perfectly. It obviously helps when you've got a stellar offensive line. It will be interesting, obviously, looking further ahead than this season, who they bring in at quarterback, whether or not they re-bring in Philip Rivers, or obviously they just signed him to a 1 year, $25 million deal. Be interesting to see what they do at quarterback next season, whether or not Frank Reich kind of handpicked. Obviously, well, you'd hope he handpicks it, and it'd be interesting to kind of see what style he goes. Obviously, Philip Rivers has his own style of chucking the ball. It's absolutely abhorrent, but it'd be interesting to see kind of the evolution of the Frank Reich offense and who they get to kind of signal call that.
Yeah, one to keep a track of over the course of the off-season, indeed. The Colts, for the time being, still remain in wildcard contention, thanks to the Tennessee Titans still holding the divisional lead as things stand. They got back to winning ways yesterday, putting a beat down on the Jacksonville Jaguars, 31-10. Derrick Henry, after kindly taking last week off, decided to turn up this week and rumbled for another monster day with over 200 yards. Slight story, I suppose. Gardner Minshew back playing quarterback for the Jags. Don't really understand why he's been taken out, to be completely honest. I'm not saying he's the answer, but certainly we know Mike Glennon isn't. So, we'll wait and see what the Jags do for the rest of the season. Can they get another win? I think I gave them 2 wins back in week 1, so they're halfway there, but they've been there for a long time, haven't they? Let's see if they can find another one. Denver, Carolina, I said in my preview piece, it could be a sneakily entertaining game, and it proved to be that way, particularly in the fourth quarter. It went backwards and forwards. Really frustrating though, Drew Lock, isn't he? One of his better days this week. 4 touchdown passes, some really good deep throws to KJ Hamler in particular. Cracking stat line for him, wasn't it? 2 receptions, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's the way to get the job done. That's what you call efficiency. Teddy Bridgewater held without a touchdown as the Carolina Panthers' struggles continue after a little bit of a promising mid-season revival, but they drop to 4-9. Denver improve to 5-8. And the final game, just to catch up on in this little section, is the Butler's Bowl. The Chargers and the Falcons, they both tried their best to lose the game for each other, didn't they? Both driving with less than 2 minutes left, neither team having timeouts, both in field goal range, both turned the ball over. But ultimately, it was the Chargers that got the job done. The first half, though, what on earth was that at the end of the first half? We ridicule the Chargers every week, it seems, for clock management, but if you haven't seen the end of the first half, go check it out. They call a running play on 3rd down to set up a 4th down. The offense basically stays on the field. Half the field goal unit are running out. It was just all kinds of a disaster. So probably poetic justice that the field goal unit got an opportunity to get the job done, and ultimately they did, and they take the spoils in that one. Let's flip our attention then, fellas, across to the NFC. We've talked about all the sides there in the AFC side of the playoffs and the AFC teams that got victories yesterday. Let's move NFC and let's talk about probably the biggest surprise, I would say, for the weekend. Don't think many people would have been picking this one. I am, of course, talking about the debut of Jalen Hurts. And Kieran, it's something you've talked about for a while, that they should at least experiment with it and see how it goes. It couldn't have really gone much better, could it? Getting a big win on the road not on the road, it was at home, but getting a big win over the Saints. Impressive whether it's at home or away. Great start for Jalen Hurts, and real surprise win there for the Eagles, mate.
I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I think it not necessarily that even that. I think Carson Wentz is a bad quarterback. I think I've made that clear. But I think the biggest thing that Jalen Hurts did for this team, because, he was only 17 of 30 passes for a touchdown, 167 yards. But I think the biggest thing was he gave this team a shot in the arm. He breathed some life into it, like a bit of youth and almost a fresh start for them at this late point in the season. A lot of people ignore it as well. 106 yards on the ground. Dude's got wheels. Like, we knew he was mobile in college and he could make plays. And that's what I like about him, as opposed to Carson Wentz, a guy who is really limited in what he can do because of the way he plays the game. Jalen Hurts makes plays. I don't care about his passing stat line. He made it work, and he made plays when plays were needed. Obviously, Miles Sanders as well. They broke a 48 game streak, I think it was.
I think it was.
Well, even bigger streak then, that the Saints had. Nobody's rushed for over 100 yards on them in, years. And then Miles Sanders almost accomplished that with just one rush at one point. I think at one point in the game, he had more yards on one run than the entire New Orleans offense did. So, and I think we're pretty much done with the Taysom Hill experiment at this point. I think you should probably be over that. He's clearly not a good quarterback. He can't. I'm not saying the Eagles are a good team, but you should be able to beat that terrible Eagles offense if you're a starting quarter. Man's 30 years old and he can barely throw a football. Look, we knew this game was going to be different for the Eagles. We knew Jalen Hurts was going to breathe life into the team, but at the end of the day, it's still the same Eagles team we've been seeing. It wasn't particularly impressive, but they made the plays they needed to win this game. And I think New Orleans need to take a step back now and say, hey, maybe Taysom Hill isn't the guy. Maybe we should start the GOAT Jameis Winston. Maybe we should start eating some W's. It was a bad game for them, and their defense looked lost, which was weird to me because that defense has looked fairly competent all this year. And I mean, they've only really stopped Tom Brady and his noodle arm, but they've played well enough to get them to a point where they were 10-2 before this game. They were really one of the best teams in the NFC, and this is a disappointing loss for them going in against the Eagles team, who are pretty much only sitting where they are in the division because they took a draw against the terrible Cincinnati Bengals team. But I think Jalen Hurts was just a shot in the arm for this team, and hopefully he can improve, and that'll be. I don't like giving the Eagles props. I think their fans are terrible people, but it really is a shot in the arm for this team. And I think that confidence, maybe just start Jalen Hurts for the rest of the season. There's only a few games left. Get him the experience, and you might be looking at a new starter down there in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Lawrence, I know you want to come in and make a point on what Kieran's just said there, and obviously give you opportunity to do that. But just a question to you as well, if you can answer this for me. And whatever happened on the offensive side of the ball, and that may be what you want to talk about. Kieran mentioned there about a shot in the arm. What an impressive performance from this Eagles defense yesterday. Absolutely dominant. They seemingly were in the backfield with regularity. They put plenty of pressure on Taysom Hill. Just to make something absolutely clear, by the way, I'm not a Taysom Hill hater. I'm not I don't dislike him. I think it's great that he's been given an opportunity. I just wanted to see him throw the ball, which he didn't in that game against Denver when we sort of went in depth about him the other week. But he faced a really tough defense here yesterday. So just words on the Eagles defense, and obviously let you come back on anything that you wanted to from Kieran there, mate.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm with you there, Sean. There was definitely sweat all over the field. Josh Sweat, that is. 2 sacks. He wasn't even expected to get a lot of game time, but he came on two absolutely monster sacks. I'm going to continue my disagreement with Kieran about Taysom Hill. Let's just look at a few little facts before we stick him in the NFL dustbin. He's now 3-1 as a starter. They barely lost. They lost by 3 points, and it was the defense that absolutely capitulated on Sunday. To allow 2 100-yard rushers is I put it on the Saints defense having a terrible game. I don't think Taysom Hill had the worst game ever. If you want to talk about people like Dwayne Haskins, we can talk about Dwayne Haskins in a bit. He's in his own league. Taysom Hill is a better quarterback than Dwayne Haskins. So, let's not get too carried away with the Taysom Hill hating. He's managed to babysit that team to a 75% win record in his 4 games. Yeah. I don't think that's too bad.
Yeah, he's certainly not the
Teddy Bridgewater. He wasn't undefeated as Teddy Bridgewater was last season when he stepped in for Breeze being injured. But I still think he's done a half decent job.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't the reason that they lost yesterday. That's absolutely true. So, Tim, final words on this game. You were obviously were sort of in the camp of sort of sticking with Carson Wentz. I mean, the one stat that really springs out on this, and we had a little disagreement with it last week, was just around how many sacks Carson Wentz had taken. All of a sudden, the worst offensive line in football doesn't give one up. Impressed or not?
Well, one thing I will say is the reason for the Saints defense was flummoxed was probably because they've got no tape on Jalen Hurts. This is what I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Is like he'll come in and he'll perform as he is performing, and like I say, he's his passing performance wasn't great, but no one's got any tape on this guy. No, you're the Saints defense. You've got a blank canvas straight in front of you. You have no idea what is coming. You have no idea on specific plays for Jalen Hurts. And this is what I'm saying. Although you might be getting the wins now, come next season when teams get a bit of tape on them, and like say Jalen Hurts made plays when he needed to make plays. Once teams have tape on you for those kind of situations, those will go straight out the door, and then those wins start to become losses. So that's the reason why the defense wasn't able to get any penetration, was not able to get any, make Jalen Hurts sweat. I suppose is the way it's a bit, but. You would still expect a Taysom Hill and a Sean Payton New Orleans Saints team to go in there and win. Obviously, devastating loss in terms of it could cost them the first round bye. Hopefully. One thing I will say, actually, when Lawrence mentioned, if you want to talk about comparing Dwayne Haskins and Taysom Hill, it's like comparing stubbing your big toe and stubbing your little toe, isn't it? They're both still crap.
Well, look, I think Taysom Hill, I'm in the Lawrence's game. I think he's done a decent enough job. We'll see how it goes. Drew Brees potentially back this week. We'll wait and see how that plays out. You mentioned there, though, Tim, it obviously potentially could cost the Saints the number one. The team that potentially benefit because of that, of course, are the Green Bay Packers. They got the job done again, seemingly, for me, in second gear throughout, although the scoreline suggests it was a close one. I think I saw one stat. Didn't they hold the ball for like 14 minutes of the third quarter or something absolutely ridiculous? It just seems as though they could do what they wanted at will. Another great day for Aaron Rodgers. We have just had a comment right on cue. There you go, Rodgers for MVP. I think it's pretty hard to disagree. I think we're down to probably a two-horse race in terms of that one. And certainly if you were basing it on yesterday, Rodgers outperformed Patrick Mahomes. He was superb again yesterday, mate.
Yeah, he was. I think for me, my money would still be on Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes' 3 picks means that, obviously, statistically, I suppose Rodgers is maybe marginally shading it. But I think when it's close like that, the voters and the way that it's kind of done is that they'll look at the record, and I think the Chiefs' record will ultimately give Mahomes the votes over Aaron Rodgers. But yeah. If this was a horse race, I suppose I would say Mahomes is probably a length clear over Rodgers, but again, you've got a couple of weeks. Mahomes next week could see his MVP crash and burn if they lose to the Saints, and obviously if the Packers then win out. So again, this time next week could be having a slightly different conversation. But talking of the Packers, I don't see a scenario where they don't now finish up with the 1 seed. They've got the Panthers, the Titans, and the Bears. And even if the Titans and Derrick Henry run all over them, you have to think the Saints lose one of the Chiefs, Vikings, and Panthers games. Probably the Chiefs next week. But yeah, they were quite workmanlike in this one. They shut down the Lions for the most part. They controlled pretty much and did whatever they wanted to do. And then talking of MVPs, I think Matt LaFleur has to go into consideration for Coach of the Year. Finally going to get kind of credit for. He's not really been given as much credit as he probably should have been, and myself included. I've not really given him much credit for last season's performance. Many people thought they were frauds, but to come back and essentially be the same team and be the same kind of identity and just continually do it and get it done. You have to clap your hands together in a Jason Garrett style for that one. Yeah, Rodgers obviously with his performance now leads the league in passing touchdowns with 39. Obviously ran one in this one as well. And like I say, I think he has a couple of less sacks and one less interception on the season than Mahomes. So like I say, statistically probably maybe slightly edging it on Mahomes. But about the game, Lions. I think Lions fans might impressed is probably too strong a word, but at least will grimace a little bit and say that they're fighting and they're trying to stay in games. It was tied at the half, I think, wasn't it? And then the Packers just came out and did what they wanted to do. But Packers now won 7 of the last 10 NFC North, so obviously they've had a stranglehold in that division for the last decade or so. And Devontae Adams, another shout out to him, breaks the franchise record with eight touchdowns in consecutive games. Nice catch and run, obviously a lot of yak on that one, and a couple of nice grabs from Valdez-Scantling as well, including a tuddy as well. For me personally, love to see a Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl. I think would be great. I just think with Green Bay, I think what sets the Chiefs apart from Green Bay and what is kind of the slight on Green Bay is you always feel there's just that one game where Aaron Rodgers is going to come out and just think, do you know what, can't be asked today. Just gonna to throw it away and they're just going to throw a stinker. And I think that the run game of Jones and Jamal Williams didn't really get too much going, and they've not really got anything going too much in the last couple of weeks from what I've seen as well. So similar to the Chiefs in the sense that the ground game is probably not one of the things they want to be shouting from the top of the mountains about. But I just think Aaron Rodgers I still think there's one game in there, and it'll probably come in the playoffs. One game where he's just not going to turn up and just going to throw his toys out the pram.
Well, hopefully it's not. If it is a KC Green Bay Super Bowl, let's hope for the neutral that it's certainly not that game that happens. Let's talk about a few of the other games that involved predominantly NFC teams, or NFC teams got the result that they were looking for. Tampa Bay against Minnesota, another one that probably had playoff implications for both. Tampa pretty much solidifying their spot in the wild card with a win against Minnesota, who now slipped to I think their 8th seed, if you like. So on the outside looking in, pretty comfortable day at the office, it's got to be said, for Tampa Bay in that one. Talking of comfortable days in the office, Chicago. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Who on earth saw that one coming? 36 points for the Bears. That's probably more than they've scored in the last month, isn't it, put together? 36-7 over Houston. Big shout out to Jordan Akins, who I played in DraftKings, and he dropped the most easy touchdown you will ever see in your life. You absolute numpty. Thank you very much, Jordan Akins, and everybody else on the Texans that had an absolute stinker. Cincinnati, Dallas. Dallas comfortable victory in this one, 30-7. Andy Dalton back at his old stomping ground. Couple of touchdowns, including a cheeky one right at the end to Tony Pollard when the game was already taken care of. But yeah, Dallas back to winning ways. Cincinnati just cannot wait for the season to end. The Rams got the win on Thursday Night Football. We will very quickly gloss over it, Kieran. But 24 points to 3. Another bad day at the office for the New England offense, and obviously the defense and special teams couldn't bail them out this time around. The Rams looking like a real strong team in that NFC. They will be a force to contend with in the playoffs. I think the Seattle Seahawks are pretty much guaranteed to join them there as well. It's going to take a pretty big collapse, I would suggest, over the next couple of weeks. They absolutely battered the New York Jets 40 points to 3. So much so that Russell Wilson and a host of others were pulled out of this one in the third quarter. Real comfortable day at the office. Obviously, firing Greg Williams was exactly what was required in New York, wasn't it? Not. And of course, the other New York team that had a little bit of a crest of momentum, crashing back down to earth. 26 points to 7. The Cardinals take care of business against the Giants. Daniel Jones back in this one for me. Didn't seem like he was ready. Colt McCoy ended up coming into the ball game. But yeah, again, another fairly comfortable routine victory for Arizona. So a few blowouts that we sort of caught you up there. And of course, the big winners in all of that, of course, Lawrence, is the Washington football team. When we spoke last Monday, they obviously hadn't kicked off. They got the somewhat surprising or somewhat expected, depending on your persuasion, win on Monday night against the Steelers. And then obviously followed that up with another absolutely massive defensive display. I don't think I've ever seen anything as dominant as Chase Young's display yesterday. He was absolutely all over the field. If anybody was questioning why he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, I think he absolutely shut anybody up yesterday. You can see why there was talk of him going number 1 overall, and obviously it's only because Cincinnati were desperate for a quarterback that he probably didn't. But, you know, again, another absolutely stellar performance from this defensive line. We were talking in the group chat yesterday. For me, best defensive line in football, and certainly playing that way at the minute, mate, you must be thrilled with your former side.
Yeah, I was just going to say, wait a second here. Since I've abandoned them, have Washington just won their last 4 games, not allowed a team to score over 17 points as well in that entire stretch. And to top it off, they're in not joint, but sole possession of the NFC least at the moment. Maybe I should reject a team I support for 35 years more often. So, you know, when I'm about 80, I'll stop supporting the Ravens. No, to be fair, I am very, very, very happy. I mean, this was an absolute kind of coming out party for one guy, and I just want to give you a nice little sound effect here for you.
Very good, very good.
There we go. So hopefully you all appreciated that sound. I mean, he absolutely is the Predator. Yes, he's young, and yes, he chased Nick Mullins for 60 minutes. I think the only time that he stopped chasing Nick Mullins was when he picked the ball up to score a fumble recovery touchdown and kind of ran like a gazelle. You know, we've got to pay credit to F.A. Abada, who managed to almost score a touchdown before Jerry Jeudy made that tackle, but he didn't quite get there. Whereas Chase Young, once he had the ball in his hands, have you ever seen a defensive lineman look that slick on a fumble recovery return? He looked like he could have ran 200 yards and still not been out of breath at the end of it. So yeah, that was kind of just awesome watching him in full stride. He had a sack, 6 tackles, 1 for a loss, 2 quarterback hits, forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. And that was his first NFL touchdown. And don't forget, he is still only 21 years of age. 21. So, my goodness, he has got a huge, huge career ahead of him. And he, almost goes without saying, but he's leading the NFL in terms of rookies with 5.5 sacks at the moment. That was the good news for Washington fans. The incredibly bad news was that Dwayne Haskins had to make his way back onto the field of play, which to me was the most depressing sight. That was probably the reason that I started, my affair with the Baltimore Ravens, because I just couldn't stomach seeing Dwayne Haskins on a field. So you got Alex Smith nursing a strained calf, and yes, it was the same leg that he had almost kill him. So got to give the guy credit and let him kind of try and just kind of rest that leg for a week. So on comes Dwayne Haskins, and he has a miserable second half. 7 out of 12, 51 yards, 0 touchdowns. I think the only thing, there was only 2+ points from Dwayne Haskins taking the field. 1, he didn't throw an interception, and 2, he managed to successfully execute 4 quarterback kneels, including 3 at the end of the game. I mean, I was getting incredibly nervous that he was going to do something stupid, because he wasn't even they weren't even composed, those kneels at the end. It was just like, please, for goodness sake, just put in the punter, let the punter take the knees. That was a horrific way for the game to end. So Alex Smith, before, he was having an equally bad game, and he only threw for just over 50 yards in the half. And about the only offensive player on Washington's team that had anywhere near something worth talking about was tight end Logan Thomas, who had 6 catches, but his catch total was under 50 yards. So I think that the whole Washington offense had I think it was 191 yards. It was abysmal. So, nothing to talk about. But this is where we talk about the Washington D, which did play absolutely lights out from the start to the end. So you had that, that first half pressure from Young and more long-limbed heroics from Montez Sweat. But then Dustin Hopkins managed 2 field goals, and going into the half, it was 7-6 to the 49ers. Jeff Wilson's 1-yard touchdown giving them the lead. Then Jonathan Allen gets the pressure. Chase Young picks up the ball, sprints for that touchdown, and that was it. The Washington had the lead for the rest of the game. They came out in the second half. Dwayne Haskins had his only half-decent drive of the game, managed to get a field goal. Then we had another impressive rookie, Cameron Curl, who I doubt anybody has heard of until he scored his first touchdown. A huge pick six off of Nick Mullins. So that's 2 defensive touchdowns. A late Kyle Juszczyk touchdown and 2-point conversion meant the 49ers came within 8. But the defense hung on at the end. And a quick note at the end, Washington's defense scored 12 points. Dwayne Haskins in a half scored 3 and managed under, including all those lovely kneels, under 50 yards of offense in an NFL half. I'm really worried for Washington. They're going up against Seattle, who has an absolutely porous defense. But if they're starting Dwayne Haskins, then I might actually just not even watch the game. I cannot stand watching Dwayne Haskins take the field.
Ye of little
Doesn't
faith.
come across like that.
Yeah, it doesn't come across at all, does it? Ye of little faith. That defense will carry you a long, long way, my friend. Kieran, you wanted to say something on Washington?
Yeah, a guy who Lawrence will definitely know, who doesn't get enough credit on either stat sheets or by pundits, but the 320-pound, 6'3" man mountain, Deron Payne, who is so disruptive on that defensive line. That's why you see so much production from guys like Chase Young and Montez Sweat, because Deron Payne is a scary human being. And because he can line up at the nose, 3 tech, 5 tech, whatever you need. He is in there and he is constantly being disruptive. And that is the reason why you're going to see so much production. I'm not saying Chase Young's not a brilliant player, but when you've got a guy like that who is constantly a threat and constantly disruptive, you have to make a game plan for. You're going to see so much production from guys like Sweat and Young because of Deron Payne being in there and constantly being a threat. He's not lighting up a stat sheet. He's, not really a feature player. But if you look how much he affects a team, he could potentially be a defensive player of the year candidate in just what he does in terms of setting up stuff for other guys. But, football is very stats driven, so you may not hear about him as much, but he is definitely a standout player on that defensive line.
He's the sort of guy that when you get the NFL Top 100, which is voted for by the players, he should make an appearance for the first time. So, yeah, I look out for him to probably be in the 90s because defensive linemen do not get, unless you're Fletcher Cox or Aaron Donald, you're not really going to get the headlines. But, yeah, absolutely agree. Him and Jonathan Allen have just been plugging away all season. And that was my biggest bugbear against Washington going back as far as I can absolutely remember, is the fact that they can't tackle. And what they have actually proved this season is that they can tackle. So that to me, even if the season ends kind of 6-10 or whatever happens, the fact is that defense is playing, and it's playing to the whistle, and it's playing hard, and that, I can't ask for more. Well, I can ask for Dwayne Haskins to not even get on the bus.
Get off your high horse. The Washington football team are playing well. Let's move along, fellas, because we're going to talk a little bit, actually, because this is what started a debate in our group chat at about midnight. I think we're all a bit tired, all a bit cranky, and we just said we can't really be asked to argue with each other, but we've obviously got differences of opinion, so let's have a little bit of a discussion about it now. We've joked about the NFC East all season, and we've said that somebody has got to ultimately go and win it. And it almost feels a little counterproductive at this stage now, doesn't it, that Dallas got a win yesterday, that the Eagles got a win yesterday. If it's all going to be in vain because they're going to end up sitting behind Washington anyway, you kind of think, well, what's the point? And maybe do we even take that further and say, well, yeah, that's great, Washington, you're going to win the division, but you're now going to be picking somewhere in the 20s in the draft, when actually if it was just done purely on record, you'd still be in line for... probably something around the 10 to sort of 12 sort of area, I would guess. I don't have the exact number in line, but, this is what started the debate yesterday. So I think, Tim, I think it's safe to say that me and you have got very different opinions on this. So I'll let you open up the debate, my friend. I will do the gentlemanly thing. I'll let you get your shot across the bows first. So you're of the firm belief that winning at this stage actually should be sacrificed because ultimately you do yourself more harm than good.
Yeah, so for me, right, I'm a Washington football team fan. Then that team winning the last 4 games, potentially, right, and I don't want to hyperbole the ripple effect. It could be one of the worst things the Washington football team do, right? Because they've won the last 4 straight, and by winning their last 2, they've gone from potentially, if they obviously win the division, the worst they can be is the 19th pick, right? They could be a top 10 overall pick. You've got a defense, you've got all the stars on that defense, and the difference between top 10 pick to clearly the Washington football team are in the market for a quarterback next offseason, right? They haven't got any cap space, or they've got very little cap space because they've invested in Alex Smith this year and whatever he is next year. But that could be the difference between like Trey Lance, who's going to be he's going to be in the top 10, and you've got Kyle Trask and Mac Jones, who might be a bit later on, right? So you're telling me that from a Washington's perspective, that you would rather restrict yourself on the quarterbacks that are available at the back end of the first round of the draft or early second or whatever. Like, you want to pigeonhole yourself into who you can select, all because you want to play one game in January, right? Let's just say hypothetically that they're going to go to the playoffs and do one and done because they're going to face decent teams. Yes, they've beaten the Steelers, but we all think they're frauds anyway, right? Alex Smith should be 100 million miles away from that team in 2021. Dwayne Haskins will probably be in the XFL and be the worst quarterback in that league as well, right? You've got almost 17% of your cap invested in that offensive line, and you're going to trot out. You're going to try out people like Alex Smith, who's done well. Again, he's not the future, right? But you want to sacrifice having. Obviously, you're not going to get Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, you're not going to get Justin Fields. But you want to sacrifice the rest of those quarterbacks just because you want to play one game in the playoffs. I think the long term damage that could do could be seen for years and years and years. You've got a rookie running back who is a star. You've got a star wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, and you've got Logan Thomas, who's up and coming and been absolutely fabulous this season. You haven't seen anything like that since Jordan Reber's healthy and not getting concussions. You are one quarterback away and probably a wide receiver too, and the re-signing of Brandon Scherf away from being an absolute real dark horse. And I'm not going to say a dynasty, but you could be a force to be reckoned with for years and years and years, because you've got so many star-studded players that are on team-friendly deals or deals that help the team build around a rookie quarterback. And Sean, you said in your rebuttal that there are good players in each round of the draft, but quarterbacks outside of round one are very hard to get. You don't get Dak Prescott's, you don't get Russell Wilson's growing on trees, and you're restricting yourself into the pool of players that you are predicting for that quarterback. It's just a quarterback you need. You don't need anyone on defense. You maybe just need a wide receiver, which you can pick up in any round of the draft. If you had a quarterback that would be there for next year, say that hypothetically, if Alex Smith is there next year, if you could pick a quarterback that can sit for a year, then fine. I'm all aboard with Washington going for it. But the fact is, whoever they pick next year in next year's draft, and I will get a tattoo or whatever you guys choose if Washington don't take a quarterback next season, right? If they had a quarterback that they could pick and sit for a year, I'm all behind it. But the fact that they're going to be the week one starter next season, and whoever it is, if you're picking from people like the Jake Fromms, the Will Greers, and Mason Rudolphs in the latter rounds, second round onwards, I'm sorry, but you're just going to be in exactly the same position in 2022, where you've got another quarterback. How many times have we seen teams in the middle of the drafts and just do constant, 500 seasons or 7 and 9s, 9 and 7s or whatever, just consistently go around that cycle and not improve just because they've not had that pick where they've had a top 10 pick and then allowed them to to make that step on. It's worse than I'd rather find a needle in the haystack, to be quite honest, than trying to find a quarterback in the later rounds. I don't. Sorry, and just a final point. I know that I've seen a stat that since Alex Smith has come in, they've been a top 10 offense in the last 4 or 5 games. But they've played Detroit, Cincinnati, Dallas, and Pittsburgh. 2 of those wins, the ground game demolished them. The other 2 wins, the defense won them the game, and obviously they lost the other one. So the offense, whilst they have won games, they've even been given 3 points off the defense or short field. If you have at least competent quarterback there behind on a rookie deal, and you get essentially the pick of the litter outside Lawrence and Fields, I'm sorry, but Washington could have a decent team for 5 to 10 years if they play it right. And I just think that the 4 wins over the last 4 weeks is putting that in jeopardy.
So I'm going to come in and then I'm going to bring you boys in at the bottom of the screen because I'm not 100% sure of your opinions on it. Lawrence is absolutely chomping at the bit to get in here, obviously as the Washington fan. But just from my perspective, and for me it's a very simple answer, and maybe it's too simple with the way that I answer this, but I just thought we played this game to win.
Yeah, you do.
That's the thing for me. So it's like, I understand where you're coming from, but I just don't understand why. If you've got a chance to win your division, at the end of the day, there's only going to be one team out of 32 every year that can win the ultimate prize. Everybody wants to win the ultimate prize, but we all know that, it's 1 in 32 teams that are going to get that opportunity. And unfortunately, yes, the Patriots have bucked the trend and have won it with regularity over the course of the last 10, 15 years. But realistically, they're the only team to have ever done that. If Washington make the playoffs, they then have, yes, they're not going to be anybody's favourites at the start of the playoffs, but they have a 1 in 14 chance, which is a much better chance than a 1 in 32 chance that they had at the start of the season as being the team that ultimately takes the prize at the end of the day. Now, I've sat through 0-16 and seen the Browns draft Myles Garrett. I've seen the Browns go 1 and 15 and draft Baker Mayfield. We're now 3 years later on, and the Browns still haven't secured a playoff berth. The same draft that Baker Mayfield was taken, Sam Darnold went number 3 to the New York Jets. Josh Allen went to Buffalo later on in the draft. It does, being anywhere in the draft doesn't guarantee you anything other than an opportunity to make your selection earlier. It doesn't mean you're going to get your selection right. There's other things that come into the equation as well in terms of the system that's in place, the surroundings, the supporting cast that are there. I mean, I don't know, and I'm not claiming to have watched tons of the Washington football team, but I think they've got a lot more holes to address than what you've probably said there. I think they're certainly more than a number 1 receiver, a number 2 receiver, and a competent quarterback away from having a sustainably good offense. I think for me they've got a lot of holes. Their opportunity is right in front of them now. If you're Washington, you're assuming next year that Dak Prescott's coming back and the Cowboys are playing better. If you're Washington, you're sitting there thinking, surely the Eagles aren't going to have as many injuries next year. And all of a sudden, you might end up with the same record next year. You might even improve your record. But you could be sitting at 9 and 3 at this stage and being second in the division because you don't know what the other sides are going to do. For me, it's all in front of Washington as things stand at the moment. They control their destiny. As Lawrence said, they're now in sole possession of that divisional lead for the first time in a few weeks. And if I was them, I'd be absolutely riding this as far as I absolutely could. I think, you worry about the future when you get to it. I think they're going to have to be creative in terms of whatever they do to address the quarterback position because, like you say, the top 2 are going to probably go off the board 1 and 2, aren't they? The Jets are going to want a quarterback. The Jags are going to want a quarterback. So those 2 are gone regardless. So unless you're willing to force a trade, regardless of where you're picking, even if you were scheduled to pick at 3, you're probably going to have to get rid of an awful lot of draft capital to move up into that top 2. So for me, whether you end up on the 3 slot, whether you end up on the 23 slot, I'm sure if I said to Lawrence now, I'll give you the 32nd selection in the draft, he would absolutely bite your hands off because that obviously means they've gone all the way and won the big one. So I'll very quickly bring you boys in. I'm a bit conscious of time. I think we could talk about this all night, and obviously me and Tim wouldn't agree on it if we did talk about it all night, but that's the beauty of it. It's all opinions. Neither of us are right or wrong. We just got a different view on it. So, boys, just very quickly, Lawrence, you were chomping at the bit, so I'll bring you in just to get your views on it as the Washington fan.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be calm about this. Let's just look at a few little facts here. 6 teams have won a Super Bowl from a wildcard position. Not a one-off. 6 different teams have won a Super Bowl from the wild card. The Raiders, the Broncos, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Giants, and the Packers. They've all won a Super Bowl from a wild card position. So yeah, you've got to be in it to win it. And I would every single time take a 7-9 division win and an opportunity to do some damage in the playoffs. And then lose some degree of my pick getting higher. Yeah, we've passed the point. With 4 wins, we passed the point of being able to get Trevor Lawrence. That went a long time ago. Henry Ruggs basically has decided that the Jets are going to get Trevor Lawrence if they want him. Whether they choose otherwise, up to them. But they're going to have that opportunity. I'm with you, Sean. You play to win. You look at historically, what have our teams been through in the last 20 years? Hell, and more hell. So and drafting hell as well. We've had high picks, and what have we done? Pick Dwayne Haskins. What to say? We've picked Josh Doxson. Josh Doxson, who's that? Exactly. Josh Doxson. Unbelievable. So, we just, if that opportunity comes along, I say we take it. You look at the most historic 7-9 team in NFL history. What did they do? They delivered one of the most iconic plays in NFL history with the Beastquake. They were a 7-9 team. Look what they did. It is possible. I think that the glasses that Tim's wearing are slightly silver and blue in terms of kind of the perspective, because I think he is seeing the future. He is seeing the future that Washington do have an opportunity to be a dominant team. But let's just look at one. I'll give one more fact and then let Kieran talk. The reigning NFL most valuable player, where was he picked in the draft?
32nd.
Thank you very much. I rest my case, Your Honour.
He'd be out of the league in 2 years.
Kieran, we've got to wrap the debate up because there's still a few things we want to get to, and we want to have a little bit of a chat about Monday night. We're already over the air mark, but just very quickly, you're obviously used to sort of perennially being in the playoffs anyway, so this conversation's all a bit foreign to you, mate. But as you're sitting on the outside looking in now, would you rather the Patriots lost every game between now and the end of the season, or would you still like to see them trying to get W's on a Sunday?
Yeah, we've scuffed our chance at a good draft pick, so now we should just win. And I think Washington could do the same. At the end of the day, it is any given Sunday, and momentum is a hell of a drug. And momentum can take like a terrible New York Giants team in 2011 to a Super Bowl win. And I think at this point, when you've got a guy like Alex Smith, a very, very intelligent and very seasoned veteran, why wouldn't you drop in the draft? Maybe pick up a guy who's very talented, like Trey Lance or a Zach Wilson, guys who are very, very unseasoned and raw, but with the right tutelage can become great. I don't think anyone expected Patrick Mahomes to be what he was. He was, tons of raw talent, big arm, but he didn't make good football decisions, and he wasn't exactly a great quarterback at Texas Tech. So I think at this point, if you are Washington, you play to win, because like I said, it's any given Sunday, and momentum is one of the biggest things in this league. If you've got the momentum, you can win it all. So I think if you're Washington, you'd be stupid not to try, but it'd be a hell of a story if they do win.
There you go, ladies and gents. Tim was angry before we started, and now we've all ganged up on him. So get in touch with us at Full 10 Yards on Twitter. Comment along, like I said, it is all about opinions at the end of the day. Like I say, we've all obviously got different ones. But before we move on, fellas, just to wrap up the week, just a couple of shout-outs to a couple of the guys in the comments. I did flash it up on the screen, but didn't want to cut you all off while we were talking there. Just a massive shout-out to Ian David. Ian, somebody who, again, regularly watches along, watching from hospital bed. Hope you are well, mate. Obviously, get well soon. So glad that we could cheer you up on this Monday night. And also from earlier on, big shout out to Jack Humphrey. Get well soon as well, mate. We know that you've got issues of your own accord with the dreaded COVID. Fingers crossed, mate, for a speedy recovery there. And like I say, glad we could bring a bit of NFL chat and cheer to your Monday evenings. Let's get the week wrapped up then, fellas, very quickly because of time constraints. Let's very quickly get a stat from each of you. Wow me with some numbers. So let's start off with Tim.
Okay, let me just get mine up. The Jets have now gone 16 straight games, so it's a full season's worth from week 15 in 2019 through to week 14 in 2020, where their opponent has passed for more yards than them. Every other NFL team has won the passing yardage battle in at least 5 of their games this period. The Jets have lost all of them.
Yeah, that offensive mastermind Adam Gase, another stat that he can add to his resume. Absolutely shocking, aren't they? But only 3 weeks to go, New York fans. Only 3 weeks to go. That's a cracking impression, Tim. That's uncanny, mate. Absolutely uncanny. Kieran, let's get one from you, buddy.
The Bills' 10-3 record is their best through 13 games since 1991, where they reached Super Bowl 26. And who won MVP that year?
Oh, go on, Lawrence. Who won MVP?
In Thurman Thomas?
Yep, you're correct. And with that win,
Who won Super Bowl 26?
And with that win, the Patriots are officially eliminated from the AFC East title contention, snapping an NFL record streak of 11 straight titles.
Woo! Go on, Lawrence. Finish us off, my friend.
We haven't even spoken about him. How have we got to this point in this podcast without talking about Hassan Reddick's performance? Disgraceful. He's only the second player in the last 20 years to register 5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in a game. Now, I'm going to throw a question back.
No, here we go.
So there's only one other guy that's done this in the past 20 years. I'll spot you the year and I'll spot you the team. So it was 2002 and it was the Green Bay Packers. So who else has registered 5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in a game?
No idea.
Go on. Give me one guess.
No, it's 2002. No, it's 2002.
2002.
Oh, it's back then. Never mind.
Don't know, mate. Go on. You've got us.
Because it's that time of year. It's Vonnie Holiday.
Hey, very, very, very seasonal, mate. Nicely done. Nicely done. Indeed. Right, fellas, let's get some winners and losers from you. That will wrap up the Week 14 review. So, Kieran, let's start with you. Give us a winner on the week.
I'm going to go for the Englishman, F.A. Obada, with his massive play for the Carolina Panthers. The only person more excited than me was Vernon Kay on Twitter, if everyone saw his video, who I think Vernon Kay actually plays for F.A.'s former team, the London Warriors. So, yeah, big play for the Brits there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you say, just a shame that Jerry Jeudy decided to spoil the party, wasn't it? Particularly as they let the Panthers into the end zone, I think, on the next play anyway. Well, you might as well just let FA have had his moment, shouldn't they? Tim, let's come to you on the negative side of things. Give me a loser, buddy.
Yeah, cut out the middleman, eh? Loser for me, mentioned it a bit earlier on. LA Chargers, Anthony Lynn, who took over special team duties. Not a good look for him, was it? 3rd and 1 before halftime. 22 seconds to go. Yeah, just run it, Kellen Barge up the middle, and then it's just mute it, put some Laurel and Hardy music on, and just away you go. I mean, to be fair, I actually thought it was maybe worth a measurement. All right, they actually got the first down, but yeah, mind numbing with the Chargers. I feel sorry for Chargers fans.
Yeah, another week and another absolute catastrophe. Yeah, but like you say, ultimately came good in the end, didn't it? Lawrence, give us a winner, buddy.
It's the former Boston Braves. It's the team with no name. It's the NFC least leading Washington football team. Can't be any other winner in the Voss household this week.
Yeah, I was impressed with the stat that you gave out earlier, actually. The NFC East, for all of its criticism, actually the best performing division in football over the last 4 weeks. So there you go, ladies and gents. The cream is rising to the top very, very, very slowly indeed. The cream is rising to the top. I'm going to go full circle, fellas. We started off with them. Let's end with the losers on the week for me because they lost twice in a week. The Pittsburgh Steelers. James Conner, his stat line, Lawrence, 18 yards on 10 carries at a lowest 1.8 yards per carry average. Mapletron, oh, dearie me, 3 for what, 15 yards? Just, do you know what, all joking aside, and I'm obviously absolutely reveling in this as a Browns fan, I can't see them winning another game. I honestly can't see them winning another game. The wheels have well and truly fallen off. Week 17, the Browns absolutely stinking it up and getting hammered by the Steelers. But there you go. I will take my medicine if that does indeed happen. Ross, thanks ever so much, mate, for watching along as usual. There's one to whet the appetite for you. He was getting involved in our debate about the Washington football team. What do you reckon to that one, boys? Washington versus the Chiefs, student versus teacher, Alex Smith versus Patrick Mahomes. That could be a nice, tasty Super Bowl, seeing Patrick Mahomes against that Washington defense.
Washington get to the Super Bowl, I will get a Washington tattoo.
On your forehead?
No, not my forehead. I do not want a divorce, but I will get a Washington football.
Dwayne Haskins fan club.
I'll tell you what, if Washington get the Super Bowl, Lawrence, you've got to have a Dwayne Haskins tattoo.
Dwayne Haskins MVP.
After all the criticism you've given him, just tonight alone, I think he deserves a little bit of respect. Let's finish off then, fellas. There's obviously the big matchup tonight. We've alluded to it throughout the course of the pod. I am like the kid at Christmas. I'm excited for this one. I've said all day I was going to go to bed after this podcast, get a few hours kip and get up, but I've got to be honest, boys, the adrenaline is pumping. I cannot wait for kickoff in this one. I am, of course, talking Browns and Ravens. Obviously in Cleveland, the Browns winners of 4 straight. The Ravens obviously having some struggles recently. They've had obviously their COVID issues, which they are essentially over now, thankfully. You know, I certainly didn't want to see the Browns against the Ravens backups. It is pretty much going to be full go. I think even Mark Andrews probably back in certainly more of a capacity this week than he was last. It's obviously a big game, boys. Where do you all see it going? Tim, let's start with you, buddy.
Shut the oven door. Baker gonna bake.
Dearly me, things are looking up, ladies and gents. Once Tim gets on the Baker Mayfield train, that is full conversion. You seriously fancy the Browns? I think every week you send me your pick'ems through for my article, and I always giggle because it doesn't matter who the Browns are playing. They could be playing the Jets, and I still think you would pick the Jets just to spite me. But you actually fancy the Browns tonight?
Yeah, I had a bet a couple of hours ago on the Browns and the Eagles at about 70 to 1 to win the division.
Oh, there you go. 70 to 1. Yeah, I still think Washington let's not get back into Washington. We talked about them enough. I still think Washington are going to win the East, but yeah, the Browns could be good value. Certainly, they're the ones riding momentum. Kieran, how do you see it going tonight, buddy?
Yeah, like you just said, and like I said earlier, momentum is crazy. I got the Browns. Obviously, the Ravens, a lot of the guys who are going to be back tonight haven't played in a while. We saw what happened to Cam Newton when he had to take some time out because of COVID. You know, I think the Browns have just got everything on their side this game.
Loving this, boys. Loving this. I don't think we need to come to Lawrence. Go on, mate. Go on. I'll let you have your say. Go
on. I'll just ask one quick question. How's Denzel Ward? Is he okay?
He is out tonight.
Thank you very much. So with Denzel Ward out, I would like to say this will be a Ravens win. I don't mind being in the minority in this one. I had a vision, I had a dream that Lamar Jackson runs for a 67-yard touchdown.
He's not playing Dallas this week, mate.
We can't disrespect Greedy.
Greedy, who's he? We haven't seen him all season. Christ. Yeah, Denzel Ward is out.
Don't underestimate Denzel Ward being out. I think it's a decent enough headline of a knock for the Browns.
Yeah, it is a big loss for the Browns. In all seriousness, Denzel Ward having a good season. Certainly the best player in the back end of that Browns defense. For me, though, it'll be one up front, and I think Myles Garrett should, in theory, have a field day. The Ravens obviously got issues at the tackle position. I believe I'm correct in saying they're onto their third string right tackle, so I expect to see Myles Garrett living at left defensive end tonight. Ultimately, I've said this for the last few weeks. If the Browns can do what they've done effectively over the last few weeks, which is get the run game going through Nick Chubb, use the play action passing, I'm quietly confident. But I have said it as well to a number of Browns fans that have been talking about the 2 worst Browns performances of the season by a country mile versus Baltimore versus Pittsburgh so far this season. So let's see how far they've come. It feels a long, long time since that week 1 beatdown. They feel like very different sides heading into this one. All the momentum and the season opener was with Baltimore after a stellar season last year. Obviously, all the momentum currently with the Browns. They thankfully get Wyatt Teller up on the offensive line at guard. He was put on the COVID list at the start of the week, but he is activated, thankfully. No positive tests after he was identified as a close contact, so it should be another strong running day for Cleveland. Can't wait for it, boys. Can't wait for it. Wish I hadn't started work last week because it would have made tomorrow a bit better, but, there you go. These are the trials and tribulations of a UK NFL fan that we all love and endure week to week. That's pretty much it, boys. It's been an absolute belter tonight. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Some real good action over the course of the weekend. Obviously, the games mean more each and every week now. And obviously more and more ramifications on all of the matchups as we head into a busy week 15 of action. We'll obviously get you all of your previews and everything over the course of the next few days. Obviously, plenty of content still coming out from the other branches at Full 10 HQ. Particular shout out to the college boys if you'd like to chat earlier about some of the draft positioning and whether it's worthwhile starting to lose a few games, etc., etc. Check out the new scouting pod, starting to get ahead of the curve there, looking at prospects and where they might fit in and what they bring, to potential teams that could end up drafting them at relevant different slots in the draft. So that's a good one to keep your eyes and ears peeled for. Obviously, like I say, plenty of stuff coming up. Tim, on Thursday, defending his 11-2 record on the season. We've got the lads from the NFL Vintage Shop, is it, Tim? Have I got that right?
National Vintage League, yeah.
National Vintage League. I think we've also got a giveaway potentially this week as well, so tune in for that one on Thursday. Play along with the quiz, and obviously we will be back on Monday of next week to discuss all the action that has gone down. So, gents, once again, thanks for your company this evening. I will let you all sign off and close off with any words that you so wish. Timothy?
I'll be round yours in 5 minutes. We continue our punch up.
Look forward to it, mate. Absolutely look forward to it. Kieran?
Just make sure you listen to the College Football Podcast coming out on Wednesday. You can hear me take a big old dump all over Ohio State and the shady stuff they pulled this week.
Lovely, mate. Lovely. I think you need to work on your advertising skills, but you've certainly perked my interest, if nothing else. So I will certainly give it a listen, mate. Thanks for your company as always. And Lawrence, final word to you, mate. Good luck this evening, mate. I'm sure the WhatsApps will be flowing backwards and forwards. I'm sure you wish me an unpleasant evening as I do you, my good friend. But I'll let you sign off in style.
Absolutely, yeah. 2 tiny things. One, if you like a bit of Christmas cheese, make sure you visit the Full 10 Yards website. I've had a little bit of pun fun for Christmas, so enjoy that. And yes, I look forward to, Sean, you, me, and Maurice Jones-Drew still looking as uncomfortable as ever on that chair in the studio, having some coffee at the 3 o'clock club.
I look forward to it. I've never actually watched a game on Channel 5. I might even put I was going to watch it on Sky, but I might even stick Channel 5 on there.
It's much better on Channel 5. And you always get to see Claire the Bear. So a lot of respect for Claire the Bear. She seems to be their favourite UK supporter.
Absolutely. Much love indeed, mate. Much love indeed. Absolute pleasure as always, fellas. Douglas, we will work on our American accents ready for next week for you, my friend.
Kieran, do you want to just sign off with your...
Yeah, Kieran's got a belt in American accent, haven't you, mate?
Guys, thank you for tuning into our live stream. It is the best live stream, the Hobbitist property, in not only football, but all of sports. I thank you guys. We're going to have a good show again next week as well. The best show on earth.
I'll tell you what, I almost feel as though I've been outdone now because I've got to close the podcast properly, as we always do, ladies and gents. So come on, fellas, you can join in with me as it's nearly Christmas. In the great words of Kevin Cadle, it is, of course, bye-bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Full 10 Yards Podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Full 10 Yards. Or email the show, full10yards@gmail.com.